Subscribe to Storylab for more stories. Now, let's begin this one. Chapter 1. The Quiet Life. The yellow cab rolled to a stop outside a weathered apartment building in Brooklyn's Sunset Park neighborhood. Seth Nielsen cut the engine and checked his watch. 11:47 p.m. 3 more fares, and he could call it a night. 48 years old, with silver threading through his dark hair and crow's feet that deepened when he smiled, Seth looked like any other working-class New Yorker grinding through the night shift. His hands, calloused from gripping the steering wheel for 12-hour stretches, rested on his knees as he waited for his next ping. Those same hands had once disassembled a rifle in 14 seconds flat, had once ended lives in 17 different countries. But that was another lifetime. "Dad, you still out there?" His son's voice crackled through the phone speaker. "Yeah, Michael. Just finishing up. You finished that chemistry assignment?" "Most of it. I'm stuck on the last problem." Michael Nielsen was 17, a senior at Brooklyn Tech, and the only thing that mattered anymore. His mother, Seth's ex-wife Andrea Austin, had remarried 5 years ago to a tax attorney in New Jersey. Michael chose to stay with Seth. That choice meant everything. "I'll help you when I get home. Hour tops." "Cool. Love you, Dad." "Love you too, kid." Seth's phone lit up with a new ride request. Pick up at a warehouse in Red Hook. He frowned. Red Hook at midnight was either drunk hipsters or trouble. The fare was offering triple surge pricing. His instincts, the ones that had kept him alive through 12 years with the CIA's Special Activities Division, whispered warnings. He accepted anyway. Michael needed new shoes, and the rent was due in a week. 20 minutes later, Seth pulled up to a dark industrial building near the waterfront. No streetlights. No hipsters. Just trouble, as predicted. He kept the engine running. A figure emerged from the shadows, tall, heavily muscled, with tattoos crawling up his neck. Definitely not his passenger. Seth Nielsen. The man's accent was thick, Venezuelan maybe. Seth's body tensed, years of training flooding back. "You got the wrong cab, friend." "No, I think we got the right one." 3 more men materialized from the warehouse. "Boss wants to talk to you." Seth's hand moved toward the modified panel under his seat, where a Glock 19 had been holstered for the past 7 years, just in case the past ever came calling. But before he could reach it, one man raised a taser. 50,000 volts dropped him like a stone. When consciousness returned, Seth found himself zip-tied to a metal chair in what looked like a shipping container. Industrial work lights cast harsh shadows. His head throbbed, but his mind was already cataloging details. For guards, concrete floor, steel walls, one door. The acrid smell of motor oil and old blood. "Ah, you're awake." The voice was smooth, educated, with a slight Spanish accent. A man stepped into the light. Early 40s, expensive suit, gold Rolex, scarred cheek. "My name is Santiago Donahue. Perhaps you've heard of me." Seth had. Santiago Donahue ran the East Coast distribution for the Medellin Cartel's successor organizations. Cocaine, heroin, fentanyl. If it came from South America and killed Americans, Santiago's fingerprints were on it. The DEA had a file on him 3 inches thick, but he was smart, insulated, untouchable. "I'm just a cab driver," Seth said calmly. Santiago laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. "Yes, a cab driver. Who speaks 7 languages. Who once killed a Chechen warlord with a ballpoint pen in Prague. Who has 237 confirmed kills for the United States government." He leaned close, his breath reeking of expensive scotch. "Did you think we wouldn't find out? Did you think you could just disappear?" Seth's pulse remained steady. "That was a long time ago. I'm retired." "Retired." Santiago savored the word. "Is that what you call hiding? You see, Mr. Nielsen, you have a problem. 3 years ago, you eliminated my cousin in Bogota, Pablo Payne. He was moving into the cocaine business, building something beautiful. And then you put 2 bullets in his head." The name triggered memories Seth had tried to bury. Pablo Payne, a target during his last operation before retirement. A rising cartel lieutenant who'd been torturing American missionaries for sport. The kill had been clean, sanctioned, necessary. "That was business," Seth said. "Not personal. Business." Santiago's face darkened. "He was my blood. Family. And you took him from me." He backhanded Seth across the face, splitting his lip. But I'm a businessman too, so I'm going to give you a choice. He snapped his fingers. One of his men brought over a laptop, turning the screen towards Seth. The video feed showed Michael's bedroom, his son asleep in bed, completely unaware. Seth's blood turned to ice. 3 of my men are in your apartment right now, Santiago said softly. So here's how this works. You bring me $1 million in 72 hours, or I mail your son back to you in pieces. A finger first, maybe, then an ear. I'll make it last week's. Every cell in Seth's body screamed to break free, to kill everyone in this room with his bare hands. But zip ties were stronger than people thought, and 4 guns are trained on him. Most importantly, Michael was in immediate danger. Any wrong move now, and his son would die. So Seth did something unexpected. He smiled. $1 million, he said calmly. I'm a cab driver. Where would I get that kind of money? Figure it out. You're a resourceful man. Santiago nodded to his guards. Take him home. Let him say goodbye to his son. The clock starts now. They threw a black hood over Seth's head. Chapter 2. The Wolf Remembers. They dumped Seth 3 blocks from his apartment at 3:47 a.m. He jogged home, his mind already racing through scenarios, contingencies, plays. The old training clicking back into place like a loaded magazine. His apartment was empty. Michael's room looked untouched, but Seth noticed immediately what the police never would. A window latch repositioned. The faint smell of cigarette smoke. A single boot print in the dust under Michael's bed. They'd been here. The message was clear. We can reach him anytime. Seth stood in Michael's doorway, watching his son sleep, and felt something cold and ancient unfurl in his chest. The thing he'd tried to cage for 7 years. The thing that had made him so valuable to his country and so dangerous to everyone else. Before he was a cab driver, before he was even CIA, Seth Nielsen had been a Marine Scout sniper in Fallujah. He'd watched his spotter, his best friend, bleed out from an IED while waiting for a medevac that came too late. Something broke in Seth that day. Or maybe it got sharper, clearer. The CIA recruited him 6 months later. They saw what he'd become. A man with nothing to lose and perfect trigger discipline. A man who could kill without hesitation, without remorse, without mistakes. For 12 years, he'd been their scalpel. Precision eliminations, no collateral damage, in and out like a ghost. 237 confirmed kills, each one a monster in human skin. Terrorists, warlords, cartel bosses, rogue operatives. He'd never question the targets. The agency wouldn't lie, would they? Then Andrea got pregnant. Michael wasn't planned. They'd been separated one last night together before the divorce finalized. But when Seth held his newborn son for the first time, something shifted. He saw his own reflection in those tiny eyes and realized he was the monster now. All those kills, all that blood. What if Michael ever found out? What would his son see? He'd walked away, took the taxi medallion offered by a grateful agency handler, disappeared into the New York sprawl, and tried to be normal. To be good. But goodness was a luxury, and Santiago Donahue had just revoked it. Seth pulled out his phone and made a call. It rang 7 times before a gravelly voice answered. This better be life or death, because it's 4 in the goddamn morning. Albert. It's Seth. Silence. Then, Jesus Christ. The ghost speaks. What's it been, 7 years? Albert Bass had been Seth Hamler during his last 3 years with the agency. A career intelligence officer with a bourbon habit and a conscience that kept him up at night. They'd understood each other. When Seth left, Albert had been the only one who didn't ask him to stay. I need information, Seth said. Off the books. Of course you do. What kind of trouble are you in? Seth gave him the abbreviated version. Santiago Donahue, the kidnapping threat, the 72-hour deadline. Albert whistled low. Santiago's a nasty piece of work. He's been on our radar for years, but he's got federal judges in his pocket, cops on payroll, lawyers who could get Satan bail. You can't touch him through official channels. I'm not planning to use official channels. Seth. Albert's voice carried a warning. I know what you're thinking, but you've been out of the game 7 years. You're not that guy anymore. That guy is the only thing standing between my son and a cartel killer. A long pause. What do you need? Everything you have on Santiago. Properties, routines, security details, known associates. And I need locations for his men, particularly the ones who grabbed me tonight. That's a lot of classified information. Please, Albert. He's got Michael in the crosshairs. Another pause. Then, give me 3 hours. I'll send everything through the old secure channel. But Seth, once you start this, there's no walking it back. You'll be burning bridges you can't rebuild. I burned those bridges the day I became a father, Seth said. Now I'm just making sure my son doesn't burn with them. He hung up and walked to his bedroom closet. Behind a false panel, installed the week he moved in, was a small armory. The Glock 19 from his cab, a Sig Sauer P2-26, combat knife, 300 rounds of ammunition, fake IDs, $20,000 in cash, and something else, something he'd sworn he'd never use again. Seth pulled out a battered leather case and opened it carefully. Inside, broken down into components, was a Macmillan TAC-50 sniper rifle. Effective range, 2,000 yards. Number of confirmed kills with this weapon, 43. He hadn't touched it in 7 years. Now his hands moved with muscle memory, checking the mechanism, running through pre-fire checks. Everything's still perfect, still deadly. His phone buzzed. Albert's encrypted message contained everything. Santiago's penthouse in Tribeca, his warehouse operation in Red Hook, his lieutenant's addresses, his security protocols. And something else, a pattern Albert had noticed. Every Sunday morning at 10 a.m., Santiago visited his mother's grave in Greenwood Cemetery. Alone, just him and one bodyguard, keeping a respectful distance. Seth smiled. Santiago's sentimentality would kill him. But first, Seth needed to send a message. Let Santiago know exactly who he was dealing with. Chapter 3. First Blood. The warehouse in Red Hook looked abandoned. Graffitied walls, broken windows, rusted gates. But Albert's intelligence indicated it was Santiago's primary distribution center, where product was cut and packaged before hitting the streets. Security was heavy. 8 guards, rotating shifts, cameras on every corner. Seth watched from a rooftop 300 yards away, scope pressed to his eye. 5:47 a.m. Shift change in 13 minutes. He'd already been here for 2 hours, mapping movement patterns, identifying key players. The men who'd grabbed him last night were inside. He'd recognized 2 of them through the warehouse windows. One was the taser guy, tall, bald, Glock 17 in a shoulder holster. The other was shorter, stocky, carrying a tactical shotgun. Seth's finger rested lightly on the trigger. The Macmillan was loaded with .50 BMG rounds, each bullet capable of punching through engine blocks. Absolute overkill for human targets. He wanted overkill, but not yet. He needed information first. At 6 a.m. exactly, a black SUV pulled up. 4 men climbed out, the night crew heading home. Seth recognized the taser guy immediately. He tracked the target through his scope as the man walked to a beat-up Honda Civic parked 2 blocks away. Seth was already moving. He broke down the rifle, packed it into a guitar case, and descended the fire escape. By the time taser guy started his car, Seth was 3 vehicles behind him in a stolen Nissan sedan. They drove to a rundown apartment building in Bushwick. Seth parked across the street and waited. 15 minutes later, taser guy emerged in sweatpants, heading to a corner bodega for coffee. Seth followed him inside. The bodega was empty except for a bored cashier watching TV. Seth waited until taser guy was pouring cream into his coffee, then moved fast, grabbing him from behind, Glock pressed into his kidney. "Don't turn around," Seth whispered. "Don't say a word. Not if you understand." Taser guy nodded, body rigid with fear. "Where's my son?" I don't know what." Seth pressed the gun harder. "Wrong answer. Try again." "Jesus, man, I swear. Santiago didn't tell us. He just said to grab you, scare you. That's all." Seth's jaw clenched. Of course Santiago wouldn't trust his muscle with valuable information. Where does Santiago keep his high-value targets? There's a place. In Queens. A safe house. Converted factory near the docks. Address. Taser guy rattled off a street name. Seth committed it to memory. "One more question," Seth said quietly. How many men does Santiago have total? Maybe 20? Plus the guys in Colombia. But his inner circle here, that's like 6 guys. The real dangerous ones. Names. Brett Gillespie, that's the security chief. Wilson Elder, his second. Then there's Darren Sanders, Ricky Irwin, Greg Baker, and me. I'm Clifton Davis. Seth noted each name. Thank you, Clifton. You've been very helpful. Am I? Are you going to kill me? Seth considered it. This man had pointed a taser at him, had been part of the plan to torture Michael. Part of him, the old part, said eliminate the threat. But the new part, the father part, hesitated. If I find out you lied to me about anything, Seth said, I'll come back. And I won't be this polite. He slipped out the back of the bodega, leaving Clifton Davis shaking and coffee-stained. The safe house in Queens was exactly where Clifton described it. A 3-story brick building surrounded by a chain-link fence. Seth scouted it from a distance using binoculars. 2 guards outside. Unknown number inside. No visual confirmation of Michael. But the security setup matched Santiago's style. This was the place. Seth's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Time's up soon, cabbie. You got my money? He didn't respond. Instead, he sent a text of his own, directly to Santiago's personal number, which Albert had provided. I told you, I don't have $1 million, but I have something better. 5 seconds later, his phone rang. Santiago's voice was amused, confident. Oh, and what's that? You mentioned my kill count, Seth said calmly. 237. But you didn't ask the important question, which is, how many of those kills took me more than 24 hours? Silence on the other end. None, Seth continued. The longest was 14 hours. That was because the target was in a bunker in Damascus. But here in New York, with your security protocols, I'd say 6 hours, maybe less. Santiago's laughter sounded forced. Big words from an old man with a yellow cap. Look outside your window. Seth heard movement on the other end. Footsteps, a window opening. Santiago's penthouse in Tribeca had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Hudson River. Beautiful views. Zero cover. I don't see. 3rd building to your left. Red brick. Rooftop access. I'm standing here with a Macmillan TAC 50 pointed at your head. Wave if you see me. More silence. Then, very quietly, you're bluffing. Test me. See what happens. Seth wasn't actually on that rooftop. He was in his apartment in Brooklyn, 30 minutes away. But Santiago didn't know that. And the seed of doubt was planted. Here's my counteroffer, Seth said. You have 6 hours to release my son, unharmed. For every hour after that, one of your inner circle dies. I'm starting with Brett Gillespie, then Wilson Elder, then Darren Sanders. By the time I work through your whole organization, you'll be calling me sir. You're insane. No, I'm motivated. There's a difference. Seth's voice dropped to something cold and ancient. You made a mistake, Santiago. You went after my son. Now you're going to learn why the agency kept my real file classified. Why they paid me triple what other operators earned. Why they sent me when everyone else failed. He hung up. Then he loaded his rifle and went hunting. Chapter 4. Ghosts in the Machine. Brett Gillespie lived in a fortified brownstone in Park Slope. Cameras on every corner, reinforced door, panic room in the basement. Santiago's security chief didn't take chances. He'd been former NYPD, kicked off the force for excessive brutality, and he'd learned to watch his back. But he'd never faced anyone like Seth Nielsen. At 11:23 a.m., Brett emerged from his brownstone in tactical gear, heading to his armored Mercedes. He had 3 bodyguards with him, standard protocol after Seth's threatening call to Santiago. They were good, professional, scanning the street constantly. They never looked up. Seth was on a rooftop 4 buildings away, prone position, rifle stock pressed into his shoulder. Wind was negligible. Distance, 240 yards. Easy shot. But Seth didn't take it. Not yet. He watched as Brett climbed into the Mercedes. Watched the bodyguards take positions in a follow vehicle. Watched both cars pull away, heading toward the Red Hook warehouse. Seth followed from parallel rooftops, moving with practiced silence, always staying 300 yards back. When the convoy stopped at a traffic light near the Gowanus Canal, Seth made his move. One shot. The .50 BMG round punched through the Mercedes's rear window and the armored headrest, missing Brett by inches. Exactly as intended. The bodyguards erupted from the follow car, weapons drawn, screaming into radios. Brett dove out of the Mercedes, terror written across his face. Seth was already gone, sliding down a fire escape 2 blocks away. His phone buzzed. Santiago, predictably. What the hell was that? A warning, Seth said calmly. I could have killed him. I chose not to. The next one won't be a miss. You're a dead man. 6 hours, Seth interrupted. Clock's ticking. Where's my son? He hung up and ditched the phone. 3 burner phones left, picked up from various corner stores across Brooklyn. Santiago could track phone signals, but only if Seth gave him time. Meanwhile, across the city, Santiago Donahue was losing his mind. He stood in his Tribeca penthouse, surrounded by his inner circle, minus Brett, who was still recovering from the near-death experience. Wilson Elder, his second-in-command, stood by the window, watching the street below with paranoid intensity. How did he find Brett? Santiago demanded. How did he know? Wilson, a lean, scar man with dead eyes, shrugged. Nielsen, CIA. They've got resources we can't match. He's been out for 7 years. Clearly not far enough out, muttered Darren Sanders, a nervous man with thinning hair who handled Santiago's money laundering. Maybe we should just let the kid go? Call it even? Santiago whirled on him. Call it even? He threatens my organization, shoots at my security chief, and you want to surrender? No. We make an example. We show this city what happens when you mess with our family. Then what's the play? Wilson asked calmly. Santiago thought for a moment, then smiled. We use the bait he can't ignore. Send men to his apartment. Wait for him there. When he shows up, we take him alive. Make him watch while we kill his son, slowly. Then we kill him too. Send both bodies to the CIA as a message. He's not going to show up at his own apartment, Wilson said. He's not stupid. Then we make him show up. Santiago pulled out his phone and dialed. Seth was cleaning his rifle in his storage unit in Queens when his burner phone rang. Unknown number. He answered cautiously. Dad. Michael's voice, thick with fear and tears. Dad, where are you? Seth's blood froze. Michael, are you hurt? I'm scared. They grabbed me after school. They said you pissed off some cartel guy. Listen to me very carefully, Seth said, forcing calm into his voice. You're going to be okay. I'm going to get you out. But I need you to be strong. Can you do that? I don't. Michael's voice broke. Then Santiago came on the line. Touching, the cartel boss said. Such fatherly love. Here's the new deal, Mr. Nielsen. You come to your apartment. Alone. Unarmed. Surrender yourself. Maybe I'll let the boy live. Maybe. Let me talk to him again. No. You have 1 hour. Come alone, or I start cutting. The line went dead. Seth sat in silence for 30 seconds, mind racing. It was a trap, obviously. Santiago would have shooters positioned at the apartment, probably a dozen men, ready to overwhelm him the moment he walked through the door. But Michael was running out of time, and Seth had made a promise. His son would be okay. He just hadn't promised to play by Santiago's rules. Chapter 5. The Art of War. Seth's apartment building had 12 units, 6 floors, 1 fire escape. Every sight line was covered. Santiago's men would be positioned in at least 3 units with visual on the entrance, plus street teams and vehicles. Standard tactical setup. Seth approached from the roof. He'd spent the last 40 minutes moving through adjacent buildings, using service corridors and maintenance access that most people didn't know existed. Years of urban combat training in Fallujah had taught him that cities were 3-dimensional battlefields. Most people thought in terms of streets and doors. Operators thought in terms of verticality and angles. At 2:47 p.m., Seth emerged onto the roof of the building next to his apartment complex. He could see Santiago's men, 4 of them positioned in windows, trying to look casual. Another 3 on the street, pretending to be pedestrians. Amateur hour. Seth made a call from his 3rd burner phone, this one to 911. I need to report shots fired, he said, voice panicked. Someone's shooting from the building on 5th and Garfield. People are running. Oh God, I think someone's been hit. He hung up. 6 minutes later, sirens wailed in the distance. Santiago's men tensed, exchanging glances. They couldn't afford a police response. Too much heat. Seth watched as Wilson Elder made a call, then issued orders. The men began withdrawing, trying to look casual, moving to backup positions farther from the scene. Perfect. Seth descended into his own building through a roof access door he'd left unlocked years ago. The sixth-floor hallway was empty. He moved silently to his apartment, picked the lock. They'd changed it, but it was a standard deadbolt, child's play, and slipped inside. The apartment had been tossed. Furniture overturned, cabinets searched, walls damaged where they'd looked for hidden safes. They'd been thorough, but they'd missed something. Seth moved to Michael's room and pulled up the loose floorboard under his son's bed. The one he'd installed when Michael was 12, the secret hiding spot they'd used for birthday presents and comic books. Inside was something else, a second weapon cache. Because Seth Nielsen believed in redundancy. He pulled out a Sig Sauer P229 and 4 loaded magazines. Then he went hunting. The first of Santiago's men was positioned in apartment 4B, watching the street through Venetian blinds. Seth picked the lock, entered silent as smoke, and pressed his gun to the back of the man's head. Don't move. Don't speak. The man froze. Seth could see the combat training in his posture, former military, maybe Colombian Special Forces. Dangerous, but not dangerous enough. Where's my son? I don't. Seth hit him with the gun, just hard enough to daze. Then he zip-tied the man's hands and searched him. Wallet, phone, keys, and, interesting, a photograph of the Queen's safe house. Thank you, Seth said, and left the man unconscious on the floor. 2 more men were in apartment 2C. Seth could hear them talking through the door, Spanish accent, discussing whether the old man would actually show up. Seth kicked the door open and moved like water. 2 shots, both kneecaps precise and disabling. Both men went down screaming. Where's my son? Seth roared. The factory, one gasped through pain. Queens, but you'll never. Seth shot the wall next to his head. Is he alive? Yes. Yes. I swear. Seth believed him. These were soldiers, not decision-makers. They wouldn't know if Santiago had already decided to kill Michael. He left them bleeding and moved to the street. Wilson Elder watched through binoculars from a van 2 blocks away as police cars surrounded Seth's building. The 911 call had been Nielsen's doing, obviously. Smart. Force a tactical withdrawal, isolate the shooters, take them out quietly. He's good. Wilson admitted to the driver, Greg Baker, another veteran of Santiago's organization. Better than the boss expected. So what do we do? Wilson considered. They could wait, ambush Nielsen when he emerged. But the old CIA ghost had already proven he was 3 steps ahead. They needed a new angle. Call Santiago, Wilson said. Tell him we're going to the factory. If Nielsen's as smart as I think, he's already figured out where the kid is. We'll be ready for him. Seth moved through the city like a ghost, using stolen cars, subway tunnels, and rooftop paths to avoid detection. By 5:30 p.m., he was in position 300 yards from the Queen's factory. He spent 30 minutes doing reconnaissance through his rifle scope. 8 guards outside. Unknown number inside. The building had multiple exits, windows covered with bars, security cameras on every corner. But Seth noticed something. The cameras were focused outward, watching approaches. Nobody expected an attack from above. The factory was surrounded by taller buildings, old industrial structures, mostly abandoned. Seth made his way to a water tower on the tallest one, 400 yards from the factory's main entrance. From this vantage point, he could see everything. And at 6:17 p.m., he saw Santiago's black SUV arrive. Chapter 6. Into the Crucible. Santiago Donahue stepped out of his SUV wearing a bulletproof vest under his designer suit. He was nervous. Seth could see in the way the man kept glancing at the rooftops, the way his hand stayed near his concealed weapon. Good. Fear was useful. Seth watched as Santiago entered the factory with Wilson Elder and 4 bodyguards. Through a second-floor window, Seth caught a glimpse of his son, Michael, tied to a chair, looking terrified but unharmed. Rage and relief warred in Seth's chest. Michael was alive. That was all that mattered. Now he just had to get him out. Seth's phone, his final burner, buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I know you're out there. watching. Come inside and we'll talk. Or, I start cutting off your son's fingers. Your choice. Seth stared at the message for a long moment. Then he texted back. You said I had 6 hours. It's only been 4. I'm a man of my word, even if you're not. He put the phone away and made his move. The factory security was focused on ground approaches. Men with rifles covering every entrance, cameras watching every street. But nobody was watching the sewers. Seth had memorized the city's underground infrastructure years ago, part of his operational prep for retirement. Every major building in Queens connected to the old industrial sewer system, built in the 1940s and mostly forgotten. He entered through a storm drain 6 blocks away, wading through ankle-deep water that reeked of chemicals and waste. His tactical flashlight cut through the darkness, illuminating concrete tunnels covered in graffiti and rust. 20 minutes of crawling through the underground brought him to the factory's basement access, a rusted grate that had probably been forgotten since the 1970s. Seth pried it open with his combat knife and emerged into darkness. The basement was storage, old crates, broken machinery, rat droppings. Perfect. Seth moved like smoke through the shadows, ascending a service stairwell that led to the main floor. Voices above him. Guards, talking about overtime pay and where to get dinner. Seth waited until they moved past, then continued upward. Second floor. He could hear Michael now, his son's breathing, fast and panicked. And Santiago's voice, smooth and threatening. Your father is a stubborn man, Michael. He could have just paid me. Instead, he chose violence. Now you both suffer. He's going to kill you, Michael said, voice shaking but defiant. My dad. He's different than you think. Santiago laughed. Your dad is a washed-up killer driving a taxi. I run an empire. He was CIA, Michael continued. Seth felt a surge of pride. His son was stalling, buying time. He told me stories. About Prague, about Fallujah. He never lost. Not once. Everyone loses eventually, Santiago said. Not him. The lights went out. Seth had found the factory's electrical panel and cut the main power. Emergency lighting kicked in, dim red bulbs that cast everything in blood-colored shadows. And then Seth went to work. The first guard died silently, Seth's knife entering at the base of his skull, severing the brain stem. No sound, no struggle, just sudden absence of life. Seth lowered the body gently and moved forward. 2 more guards in the hallway. Seth shot both, suppressed Sig Sauer, making no more noise than a champagne cork. Both men dropped with holes in their foreheads. Contact, someone shouted. Shooter in the building. Chaos erupted. Seth moved through it like a conductor through an orchestra, each kill precise and necessary. 4th guard double tap to the chest. 5th guard, 1 shot through the eye socket. 6th guard tried a radio for help. Bullet through the radio first, then through his throat. Wilson Elder was different. He was ready, positioned behind cover, firing controlled bursts that forced Seth to take cover behind a concrete pillar. You're good, Wilson called out. But you're outnumbered. Give it up. Seth said nothing. He pulled a flashbang from his tactical vest, one of 3 he'd assembled from components bought at a hardware store, and threw it. The explosion was deafening in the enclosed space. Wilson stumbled from cover, ears ringing, temporarily blinded. Seth put 2 rounds in his chest and 1 in his head. 7 dead, 3 remaining, plus Santiago. Seth moved toward the room where Michael was being held. Santiago had a gun to Michael's head. Stop right there, the cartel boss screamed. His expensive suit was torn, his perfect hair disheveled, his face slick with sweat. I'll kill him. I swear I'll. No, you won't, Seth said calmly, stepping into the room with his Sig Sauer raised. For the first time in years, Michael saw his father as he truly was. Not the tired cab driver who helped with homework and made terrible dad jokes. Not the gentle man who watched documentaries and worried about rent. Michael saw the weapon, the killer, the ghost. Dad, Michael whispered. Close your eyes, son, Seth said softly. I said stop. Santiago pressed the gun harder against Michael's temple. Seth's shot was perfect. Through Santiago's wrist, shattering bone, forcing the gun to drop. Santiago screamed and stumbled backward. Seth was on him in 2 strides, hitting him with the butt of his pistol, driving the cartel boss to the ground. Then he cut Michael's zip ties and pulled his son into a fierce hug. "Are you hurt?" Seth demanded. "Did they touch you?" "I'm okay," Michael gasped. "Dad, I'm okay. Get outside. Run. Don't stop until you're 6 blocks away. Call 911. But go." Michael ran. Seth turned back to Santiago Donahue, who was cradling his shattered wrist and whimpering. "Please," Santiago begged. "I have money. Millions. I can pay you." "You threatened my son," Seth said quietly. "You made me break my promise to myself. I told myself I was done killing. Done being that person. I'm sorry." "You're not sorry. You're scared." Seth raised his gun. "There's a difference." The shot echoed through the empty factory. Chapter 7. The Price of Peace. The NYPD found 11 bodies in the Queens factory, including Santiago Donahue, shot once through the heart. Forensics would later determine that 10 different weapons had been used, fired by at least 6 different shooters. The crime scene was a tactical nightmare. But by the time they arrived, Seth and Michael were long gone. They drove through the night in a stolen car. Seth had dumped it 3 states away and bought a used Honda from a private seller in Pennsylvania. They didn't speak for the first 2 hours. Michael stared out the window, processing everything he'd seen. Finally, near Philadelphia, Michael broke the silence. "You really were CIA?" "Yes." "And you killed people?" Seth's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Yes." "How many? Does it matter?" Michael considered. Did they deserve it? That was the question, wasn't it? Seth had asked himself the same thing for years. The agency had told him every target was a monster, a threat to national security, someone who needed to be removed. He believed them. Mostly. "I thought they did," Seth said finally. "I believed I was protecting innocent people, making the world safer for kids like you. But now you don't believe it? Now I believe the world is more complicated than I wanted it to be." They drove in silence for another mile. "The way you moved," Michael said quietly. "In the factory, I've never seen anyone move like that. It was like you were dancing, but with death." Seth glanced at his son. "Are you afraid of me now?" Michael thought about it, really thought about it, then shook his head. "No, those men wanted to kill me. You saved me. That makes you the good guy, right?" "It's not that simple." "Maybe it is," Michael said. "Maybe you're just overthinking it." Seth couldn't help but smile. Leave it to his 17-year-old son to cut through years of moral complexity with teenage certainty. They reached a motel in rural Maryland and paid cash for a room. Seth made Michael shower, first while he swept the room for bugs, old habits, then took his own shower. The water ran red at first, washing away blood that wasn't his. When he emerged, Michael was sitting on the bed, staring at his phone. "It's all over the news," Michael said. "They're calling it a cartel war. Gang violence. The FBI is investigating." "Good," Seth said. "Let them investigate. They won't find anything that leads to us." "What about your friend? The one who gave you the information?" Seth had thought about Albert Base. His old handler had stuck his neck out, provided classified intelligence. If anyone traced the leak, Albert would face prison time. But Albert was smart. He'd know how to cover his tracks. And Seth had been careful not to leave any digital trail. "He'll be fine," Seth said. Michael set down his phone. "So what now? Do we just go back to Brooklyn? Pretend this never happened?" "We can't go back," Seth said. "Not yet. Santiago's organization is in chaos, but there are still people who will want revenge. We need to disappear for a while." "How long?" "A few months. Maybe a year." Michael's face fell. "But my senior year, graduation, college applications." Seth's heart broke a little. He tried so hard to give Michael a normal life, and now he'd ripped it all away. "I'm sorry," Seth said quietly. "I know this isn't what you wanted." "It's not your fault," Michael said. "Those guys started it. You just finished it." But Seth knew better. He'd finished it by becoming the thing he'd sworn he'd never be again. The killer, the ghost, the monster. And Michael had seen it all. How did you come back from that? Chapter 8. Unfinished Business. 3 days later, in a safe house in Vermont that Seth had maintained since his CIA days, Albert Base arrived. The old handler looked older than Seth remembered. More gray hair, deeper lines around his eyes, the weight of decades and intelligence showing in his posture. But his handshake was still firm. "You caused quite a shitstorm," Albert said, accepting a cup of coffee. "Santiago Donahue dead, his entire organization in disarray. The DEA is throwing a party." "Glad I could help," Seth said dryly. Albert studied him. "How's the kid?" "Shaken, but alive." "And you?" Seth considered the question. "How was he?" "He'd killed 11 men in one night. Become the thing he tried to leave behind. Showed his son the monster under the mask." "I'm managing," Seth said. Albert didn't look convinced. "Listen, Seth. What you did, I get it. You protected your son. No one can fault you for that. But the agency is asking questions. They want to know if you're active again." "I'm not." "They're not sure. And that makes them nervous." Albert leaned forward. "There are people in Langley who think you should come back in. Your skill set, your experience, you could be valuable, especially with the current geopolitical climate." "No, Seth." I said no. Seth's voice was firm. "I did what I had to do to save Michael. But I'm not going back to that life. I can't. Every time I kill someone, a piece of me dies too. Eventually there won't be anything left." Albert was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded. "I understand. But you should know, there are people who won't let this go. Santiago had connections in South America, Eastern Europe, even here in the States. Some of them will want payback. Let them come." Spoken like a man with a death wish. Spoken like a father who'll do whatever it takes to keep his son safe. Albert smiled sadly. "You know, when you first joined the agency, I thought you were just another talented killer. Another weapon we could point and shoot. But you were more than that. You had principles. Lines you wouldn't cross. It made you different. And look where those principles got me," Seth said bitterly. "Driving a taxi, living in a crappy apartment, barely making rent. You had a son," Albert said softly. "You raised him right. That's not nothing, Seth. That's everything." Seth thought about Michael, his son's defiance in the face of danger, his quick thinking, his moral clarity. Despite everything, despite the violence and chaos of the past few days, Michael was still a good kid, still kind, still hopeful. Maybe Albert was right. Maybe that was enough. "So what happens now?" Seth asked. "You disappear," Albert said. "Really disappear. I can get you new identities, clean documents, enough money to start over somewhere safe. Canada, maybe, or Europe. And if I say no, then you're on your own. The agency won't protect you, and neither will I. You'll be a target for everyone Santiago ever crossed." Seth considered his options. He could stay, fight, become the weapon again. Or he could run, protect Michael, try to build something resembling a normal life. It wasn't really a choice at all. "Give me the documents," Seth said. "We'll leave by the end of the week." Chapter 9. The Last Sunrise. The house sat on a cliff overlooking the Pacific Ocean, 20 miles north of Vancouver. Small, isolated, perfect. Seth and Michael moved in on a Tuesday morning, carrying boxes of belongings they'd hastily packed. Books, clothes, a few photographs. Michael stood on the deck, staring at the ocean, and Seth saw the weight his son was carrying. The trauma of kidnapping, of watching his father kill, of having his entire life uprooted. "You okay?" Seth asked. "Define okay." "Fair point." They stood in silence, watching waves crash against the rocks below. "I looked you up," Michael said eventually. "Online. There are rumors, conspiracy theories, people claiming a ghost operative named Sleipnir worked for the CIA for over a decade. 200-plus kills, 0 failures." Seth said nothing. Sleipnir, the 8-legged horse from Norse mythology, Odin's mount that could travel between worlds. His call sign, the name whispered in dark corners of the intelligence community. "That was you, wasn't it?" Michael asked. "Yes. The rumors say you never missed, never failed a mission, that you were perfect." "I wasn't perfect," Seth said quietly. "I was just focused, single-minded. I didn't have anything to lose, so I took risks no one else would, made kills no one else could." "What changed?" Seth looked at his son. "You did. The moment you were born, I had something worth protecting, something more important than the mission. And that made me vulnerable. So you quit. So I tried to quit." Seth smiled bitterly. "Turns out you can't really leave that world. It follows you, finds you, forces you to become that person again. Michael was quiet for a long time. Then, are you going to keep being that person? The killer? It was the question Seth had been asking himself for days. Could he go back to being just a father? Or had Santiago Donahue's actions reawakened something that could never sleep again? I don't know, Seth admitted. Part of me wants to say yes. I'll hang up the guns, be normal, be your dad and nothing else. But another part knows that's a lie. Because if someone threatens you again, if anyone ever tries to hurt you, I'll become that person in a heartbeat. I'll kill whoever I have to kill, break whatever I have to break, burn the whole world down if it means keeping you safe. That's kind of intense, Dad. Being a parent is intense. Michael laughed. A real laugh, the first Seth had heard since this nightmare began. And something loosened in Seth's chest. Maybe they would be okay. Maybe they could build something new here, away from the violence and chaos. Maybe. Seth's phone rang. Unknown number. He answered cautiously. Yes. Mr. Nielsen. The voice was female, accented cold. My name is Rosario Doyle. I believe you killed my cousin, Santiago Donahue. Seth's blood ran cold. If this is a revenge call. No, nothing like that. The woman laughed softly. Santiago was a fool. Impulsive, emotional, stupid. He threatened your child. Of course you killed him. I would have done the same. Then why are you calling? Because Santiago's death has created a power vacuum. And I'm filling it. I'm taking over his operations, consolidating his territories. But there's a problem, which is there are others who want what he had. Rivals, competitors, dangerous people. A pause. I need someone to eliminate them. Quietly, efficiently. Someone with your particular skills. Seth closed his eyes. Here it was, the pull, the seduction, the call back to the darkness. I'm retired, he said firmly. I'm prepared to offer you $5 million, plus protection for you and your son, plus a guarantee that no one from my organization will ever threaten your family again. My answer is still no. Think about it, Rosario said. You're good at what you do, the best I've ever seen, and you need money, protection, security. I can provide all of that. All I need in return are a few deaths. 6 men, maybe 7. Then you're free. Truly free. I don't kill for hire anymore. You killed 11 men to save your son. How is this different? Because those men threatened my family. They made it personal. And if I make it personal, Rosario's voice dropped. What if I tell you that these 6 men I want dead are planning to kidnap your son again? To finish what Santiago started? Would you kill them then? Seth's grip tightened on the phone. Are you threatening me? I'm offering you information and an opportunity. The choice is yours, Mr. Nielsen. But choose quickly. These men work fast, and your son is very exposed up there on that beautiful Canadian cliff. She hung up. Seth stood frozen, mind racing. Was a bluff? A trap? Or a genuine warning? Michael was watching him. Dad? What's wrong? Seth looked at his son, 17 years old, whole life ahead of him, completely dependent on Seth to keep him safe. And Seth realized the terrible truth. He would never be free. The past would always find him. There would always be another Santiago, another Rosario, another threat. He could run to Canada, Europe, Antarctica, it wouldn't matter. The world knew what he was, what he could do, and they would never let him rest. So Seth had a choice. He could hide, constantly looking over his shoulder, always waiting for the next attack. Or he could be proactive, take control, eliminate threats before they could manifest, become the weapon again, permanently. Dad, Michael repeated, worried now. Seth made his decision. He pulled out his phone and called Rosario back. I have conditions, he said. Epilogue. 3 months later, 6 bodies were found across North America. Each one a rival cartel leader. Each one eliminated with surgical precision. The DEA noted the pattern, but couldn't identify the killer. The CIA suspected, but couldn't prove. And Rosario Doyle consolidated her power, becoming the most feared cartel boss on the East Coast. Seth Nielsen officially didn't exist. According to Canadian records, a man named James Thornton, mild-mannered accountant, had purchased the Cliff House with his teenage son. They kept to themselves, caused no trouble, paid their taxes on time. But every few months, James Thornton would take a business trip, and somewhere in the world, someone who threatened Rosario Doyle's empire would die quietly, efficiently, impossibly. The ghost was back. Sleipnir wrote again. And Michael Nielsen, now Michael Thornton, started his senior year at a Canadian high school, making friends, joining clubs, planning for college. Sometimes he'd wake up in the middle of the night and find his father missing. Sometimes he'd see blood on his dad's clothes that wasn't there in the morning. But Michael never asked, because deep down he understood his father was a monster. But he was their monster. And in a world full of wolves, sometimes you needed a bigger wolf to protect the pack. Seth Nielsen stood on his deck, watching the sunset over the Pacific, and felt nothing. Not guilt, not pride, not satisfaction, just the cold, empty certainty that he would never stop, that he would kill and kill and kill until someone finally put him down. Because that was what fathers did. They sacrificed everything for their children, even their souls. The phone rang. Another job, another target. Seth answered. "Tell me where," he said, and the ghost disappeared into the night once more.
This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your precious time. If you enjoyed this story, then please make sure you subscribe to this channel. That would help me a lot. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.